How's it going, YouTube? Robert here, bringing you guys another Digimon deck profile. Today we have one of the funnest and craziest decks to play that I've been playing recently. This is Purple Maste Cerberus Anubismon Rush, whatever you want to call it. It's crazy fun deck. Requires a whole lot of thought process, a whole lot of thinking. You got to know a lot about what's going on in the list, in the deck, what's in your hand, what's in your trash. So just know that when you watch this video and go over it, make sure you're, if you're a purple player, you kind of already know some of these, but it's not one of those decks that you can just pick up day one and just be able to run with it. It requires a little bit of practice so you can learn a few of your lines and a few of the combos. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the Wrinkly Brain deck, starting off with our tamer. We have 4 copies of Demimeramon. This is just your most consistent card. Draw 1, discard 1 on deletion. That's really just the bread and butter of what the deck wants to do half the time, is draw a bunch of cards and discard specific cards that you want to see in your trash. 4 Demimeramon is all you really want to run. You don't want to muddy the waters by mixing in something else like a 5th egg. You will never need to see the 5th egg. You're usually going to be winning or losing by the time you see the 2nd or 3rd egg anyway. So just run the 4, no need to worry about running a 5th egg. Next up, we'll get into our rookies. We only run 8 rookies in this list. I know it seems a little dangerous, but you'd be surprised at how effective this works. We run 4 copies of BT7 Gabumon. This lets us draw 2 and discard 1 on deletion. We run 2 copies of Starter Deck Gabumon, draw 1, discard 1 on attack. And then 2 copies of Gazimon. This is our memory blocker because this format has a lot of memory gain. Stuff like Blinding Ray is good to shut down. In the mirror, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to want to, that you'll see in the rest of this deck profile that you're going to want to stop the memory gain from. And then also blue, of course, is very prevalent. Things like their Howling Memory Boost, Hammer Sparks, stuff like that. It really does help. If you're running side decks, you could make the argument to run another copy or 2 of this in the sideboard. We have no sideboards in the North America right now. I don't think we have any offline cups that run the 5-card sideboard, but if you do, I could definitely see putting another extra few copy or 2 of this in. But for now, it's not really necessary. We only really need the 2 and 8 rookies. While it seems dangerous, you'd be surprised at just the amount of times you start off with a rookie. And with Anubismon being a 4 cost, you really don't need to see you don't have to see it to be able to start your combos. It's nice, and then mulligans also being a thing helps you find more cards. If your starting hand's bad and you want to cycle into it, then you can also mulligan the hand that it wasn't very good, and you may find your rookie that helps you go into your follow-up plays. Next up, we'll get into our level 4s. We run 4 copies of Scatter Mode and 4 copies of Anubismon. This is just really, really strong while it's here. Don't forget, when BT8 comes out, the Anubismon will be limited. Scatter Mode will still stay around, still a good card to have for just general draw and cycle. But Anubismon Scatter Mode is what lets you on deletion draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards. He do be having jamming sometimes, so that's why we run stuff like Deathclaw and Calling that you'll see, so that we can make sure that this guy does die so we can get his effect off. And then Anubismon itself, when you trash this card being an effect and you have a scatter mode in trash, of course you're able to then play it back out. If this scatter mode swings in and dies, it is resolving in the trash. So if you don't, this is the only scatter mode, the one that is just swung in and died, you can still play your Anubismon and then be able to play them both out if you discard them, because that scatter mode is in the trash. So just know that. His other effect, of course, is he gets buffed for every scatter mode that you have in trash, but most of the time that doesn't come up because you're just going to digivolve it into something like a promote, or on top of it into something like a Cerberusmon, so that you can do your Cerberusmon werewolf mode plays. But we'll get over that in a second. And then, as I mentioned, with the promote, we run the promote package. This is something I've changed from the list that I posted on the channel. We had the 2 promotes, that still hasn't changed, but I took out 2 of the Tsukaimon for the Ginkakumon and Kinkakumon, so we can get the full benefit of the promote to gain the extra memory and draw the card. But then also, Kinkakumon's very good because if you have something like your promote, you digivolve on top of it to get its inheritable, or if you digivolve something else like a Cerberusmon on top of it, just being able to get rid of the memory blocker is very, very strong. That's really the crutch of this deck, is if they have a memory blocker or 2 and you can't get rid of them both, you really do slow down, because you really need the memory manipulation off of something like a Jack Raid, off of something like a Cerberusmon werewolf mode on play effect. So we run these. Of course, Ginkakumon's still good because if you use an effect that trashes a card, then you get to gain a memory. But at the same time, really, it's just for the little extra cheekiness when you can get the full combo off. And then King Kakumon's just really good to be able to deal with those memory blockers and evolution reducers like Syakomon and Gaussmon. Onto our level 5s, we run the full 4 and 4 of the Cerberusmon package. Of course, Cerberusmon on deletion, trigger draw 2 and discard 1. And then Werewolf mode has Rush, so that's always good, a little bit more aggression. And then on play, you get to delete one of your Cerberusmon, not Werewolf mode. It has to be exactly Cerberusmon to then gain 9 memory. This is where the memory blockers really can screw you over. But this is just really strong because you can get a full bunch, you can get a stack up with your Cerberusmon, you can have an analog boy in the raising or in the back, and then when you drop this down, as long as the Cerberusmon has a source, you get to hatch an egg, gain a memory, gain the memory off of Werewolf mode, so it stays your turn and you effectively gained a memory. If you play something like Dead or Alive, which we'll go over here in a second, you'll do the same thing. You delete the Cerberusmon with the Dead or Alive, and since Dead or Alive is only an 8 cost, then you get to gain memory effectively, and then if you have analog boys, you get to just combo off. So really good, and it's, you know, always a good way if you can just get a Cerberusmon, drop a Werewolf mode, swing in for that last little check. You know, it's always very strong. It's just really good. It facilitates the engine of the deck very well. Speaking of facilitating the engine of the deck, we have 2 copies of Mastemon. We run stuff like win rate, so Mastemon being able to go into it for free is very strong because Mastemon does let you trash the top card of your security and your opponent's security, and then you get to play out a level 4 or lower purple or yellow Digimon. We don't run any yellow, so we're just worried about the purple, and then that's usually something like your Ginkakumon promotes, or if you have something else that we're going to go over like Anubismon on the field, it doesn't matter what you bring out, it's always going to have a rush. So it's very good. It's the best thing to do with Mastemon. The reason why we only run it at 2 is because it's usually like a game ender. You have something like a win rate, your opponent has 1 security, you may be a swing down, maybe you can't check the last one, maybe you're afraid of something coming out like a Jack Raid, a Hammer Spark, something that ends your turn, then you can just Digivolve into Mastemon without passing your turn, bring back something like a Ginkakumon or a Ginkakumon promote, and then you've burned that last security and you're just swinging for game. So we only need 2 because, like I said, game ender, you don't have to see it, but it's really nice to safely end games. Next up, 2 copies of Nidhoggmon. This is pretty self-explanatory. Whenever you trash it being a card effect, you get to gain a memory, and then of course it has its Wind Digivolving effect. You trash a card from your hand to delete one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. That doesn't come up very often. I have had it come up, so it is nice that you have that option, especially with things like win rate, so you can go into this for a little bit cheaper, but most of the time it's just a good target to discard, because there's plenty of ways to discard. Again, Scatter Mode, Gabumons, Demimeramon, Cerberusmon, there's all sorts of good ways to discard, and just being able to gain that little extra memory for that last little push is always solid. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we have the 1 copy of Anubismon. The reason why this is in the deck is for a few reasons. One, the mat didn't feel good. I didn't like playing the mat. I didn't always need the 3 memory at the start of the turn. You can really work sometimes with like 1 or 2 memory at the start of your turn and just go to the moon. So Anubismon has really worked in its place. His Wind Digivolving effect lets you play a level 4 or a level 3 Digimon from your trash, and then his other your turn effect is when a Digimon is played from your trash, that Digimon gains Rush for the turn. So the reason why that comes up is because you can do something like play up the Gabumon. This is started at Gabumon because it just works for this example. And then let's say you have something like a Scatter Mode in your hand, and you have the memory to go ahead and Digivolve into the Scatter Mode. Since this entire stack, since this Digimon itself gains Rush for the turn, you can Digivolve into the Scatter Mode, swing in, and then get to activate the effect of the Gabumon to draw a card trashing something like an Eismon. And if there's a Scatter Mode in trash, this Eismon plays itself from the trash. So it doesn't like stay in this limbo area, it plays itself from the trash. So now you've got the Gabumon, and now you have another free Eismon body that also has Rush. So it requires a lot of combo, and it may feel like that, man, that requires a lot of setup. You'd be surprised at how easy some of that is to come off, especially with the amount of memory gain and stuff that you can get in this deck. So this is why the Anubismon has been pretty good. I can definitely see some people maybe wanting to run something like a Labramon to do that combo a little bit easier, because then you can bring a Labramon back out of the trash a Eismon and bring that out. That is definitely viable. It's worked out pretty well with how the list has worked so far, and it is just nice sometimes, just the extra body. Yeah, you know, it's like the Mastemon thing, that extra body being able to come out and have a Rush is just really, really strong. Next up is our tamers. We run 4 copies of Analog Youth. Analog Youth just fits the profile of the deck pretty well. It does exactly what we want it to do. It searches us out a Digimon that we may want, and then it also trashes the rest, so it helps fill up the numbers in the trash. There's been plenty of times where I drop this just to, I don't even care if I hit a target, it just helps fill up the trash. And then of course the all turns effect is really, really strong, which is when one of your level 5 or higher Digimon with sources is deleted, you can suspend it to hatch an egg and then gain a memory. The reason why this is super strong is because if you have something like a Cerberusmon on the field with a source underneath it, such as a promote or anything in that general realm, then you can just play down your werewolf mode, pop this, and suspend all your analogs to then gain however much memory for your analogs, hatch an egg, and then it effectively gains you memory for deleting your Cerberusmon. So just that's the real benefit of Analog Youth, is just being able to pull off some crazy shenanigans like that. So, and then like I said, good mill, good way to continue your turns that way. So next up, we have our options that we're going to get into. We have 4 copies of Jack Raid. This is pretty self-explanatory. You're going to definitely want to get your Jack Raids. You're going to want to fill your trash up, and then whenever you go for your big, like, make it so that you win the next turn, or better yet, win that exact turn, you'll usually have 10, 20, sometimes even 30 cards in trash, and then your Jack Raid just gains you a bunch of memory, and then, you know, you're able to just safely go for game. Maybe you're afraid of a Hammer Spark out of security, pop a Jack Raid, gain 2 memory, you're not worried about the Hammer Spark anymore. Stuff like that, and just to extend your plays. So we run 4 Jack Raids. It's a Hammer Spark out of security too, so it can help be a little bit defensive there. And then we're going to get into our self-deleters, as I kind of like to call them. We run 2 copies of Calling from the Darkness, 3 copies of Deathclaw. These are pretty staples for decks that run stuff like Eismon, because Eismon can live, surprisingly enough, quite often. And Deathclaw really helps you get rid of the Eismon, while at the same time could help you get rid of something like a Madoki Betamon or another problem Digimon on your opponent's side of the field that you don't really want to deal with. And it does delete a level 4 out of security, which is always solid. And then Calling helps you filter cards back out from your trash, while also helping to delete Digimon that you already have on the field. Again, Eismon, you want to get rid of it. As long as you don't grab the Eismon back, you can still resolve its effect. So just being able to delete your Digimon more effectively is very good. Deathclaw is usually the better one that you're going to want to go for, but Calling is where it, of course, is incredible. I've thought about dropping this count down maybe to something like a 3-1 or a 2-2, but there's been so many games where I've milled off plenty, like I've milled off almost all of them, and then I'm filtering for 1 and my Eismon doesn't die, and it's like, man, if that card that I replaced with could have been another removal spell, that's really what I was going with. And at 5, it seems really well. You could definitely maybe make room for 4 of these, but 3-2 has worked out pretty well for me. So next up, we have 2 copies of Dead or Alive. Dead or Alive is, of course, your big combo card that helps you extend some plays. It is an 8 cost. It lets you play a level 5 from your trash without paying its memory cost. We're not worried about the second effect of playing a Lusamon. We're really worried about just playing something like Cerberusmon back out of trash. I'm not going to go dig out the Cerberusmon stack to show you this again, but since you do gain the 9 memory off of playing the werewolf mode when you have a Cerberusmon on the field, when you delete it, you will gain the 9. If you just play Cerberusmon, you basically play him for free because he's a 9 cost, but if you play him off of Dead or Alive and he's in the trash, then you play him back out, and then you effectively play Cerberusmon and gain a memory, which is really good because then you have your analogs, you get to suspend them, gain even more memory that way, and it's just sometimes that little extra memory is all you really need to either make sure you don't die to a Hammer Spark out of security, or just, you know, maybe that little extra memory you need to extend your plays, play that win rate, go into the Mastodon, secure game that way. So we run 2 copies because it is really good, and if you hit it out of security and you have a Cerberus werewolf mode in trash and a Cerberusmon on the field, then just being able to pop that, bring out the werewolf mode, and then pass your opponent, you know, if they're at 1 memory and all of a sudden you're at 8 memory and your opponent's just done at that point, because it's hard to deal with something like that, especially with how aggressive this deck is. And then last but not least, we have 2 copies of Win Rate. Win Rate is very, very strong. A lot of people know what this card does from the Lilithmon lists, but whenever you have a tamer in play, you can ignore the color requirement. We only run white tamers, so it doesn't even matter in that situation. And then the next time you would digivolve one of your Digimon, you can discard a card of the matching color of the digivolving Digimon. So in this case, let's say it's something like a werewolf mode, then as long as the card you discard is purple, doesn't matter what color you digivolve into, although in this list we're going to digivolve into something like Mastimon or something like that, then you reduce the digivolution cost by 4. Now, this doesn't have to be restricted. I mentioned it for stuff like Mastimon, stuff like Anubismon, but sometimes just being able to win rate and digivolve into something like your Cerberusmon for 2 memory is all you need as well, because then you can just start comboing off from that point. Maybe you have a few other things set up, but they only gave you 2 memory. That's fine. Let's go ahead combo off with a win rate. And then since you do get to discard a card via the effect, you can discard an Eismon to get that body on the field. You can discard something like your Nidhogg to gain a little bit of extra memory. So all in all, it just really meshes well with how the deck runs. So, but anyway, guys, that is the full list. This deck has been super fun to play. If you watch the video on the channel, you can see how all of a sudden you look like you're behind and you're not doing great, and then you just combo off and you knock out 5 security in one turn. So it is a deck that requires a lot of learning. It's not a deck that you can, like I said at the start, just pick up and expect I'm just going to do cracked with it. It requires plenty of practice. You know, if you're a good player, then I'm sure you can do well with it, but learning all the lines and stuff does take a little bit of time. So just know that going forward that you will need to get a little bit of time in with the deck. So but all that being said, guys, this deck is super fun to play. I hope you guys take the list, use it at your locals, tell me how it does. Use it in bigger events if you want to, you know, let me know how it does. I'd be happy to hear it. I've had a bunch of fun playing this deck, and I hope you guys do as well. But all that being said, if you did like the content, be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll have more deck profiles and stuff like this coming out. At the time of recording, we're really close to 500 subscribers. It would be awesome to get to that point, and then the next milestone's like 1,000, so that would be awesome to get to. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching to the end of the video. Again, if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below of any other suggestions you may have for the list. And until next time, guys, have a great one.